All right, welcome to the first ever AMA Ask Me Anything Founders Cup edition with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Sa.
Hi, Macy. Hi, everyone.
All right, Sa, we're going to pretty much jump right into it. I had a lot of past and present players send in a lot of different questions regarding Founders Cup, both in years past and what to expect this year, 2018, as well as in the future. And a lot of them took a lot of vested interest in how you see Founders Cup as well. But I'll start out kind of where Founders Cup started out. And some of our players were really interested in the history of Founders Cup and what the thought process and purpose behind having just a one-time annual event like this is.
Sure. Well, happy to be on here, and thanks for having me. Founders Cup was basically the brainchild of the community of players that existed at the time when WACA first started. And so what the owners and the players wanted was some kind of essential national championship, if you will, to crown a quote unquote world champion. Now, obviously at the time, WACA was very small, just only in the DC area. But, you know, you get a bunch of guys together, guys and girls together. You had fun during league and you're like, well, hey, let's just make this a world championship. And so it was a silly concept at the time just because there was nothing else like it in terms of kickball or even social sports, right? And over time, it just grew. You know, it went from being in DC for a while, and then it kind of toured the different cities that featured WACA kickball. So that was kind of cool, moving all around. And then it wasn't until 1998, 1999, around then, that Founders Cup went to Las Vegas. And everyone had such a great time over there. I mean, it's Sin City. And the overwhelming response was, hey, let's just keep it at one location. Let's keep coming back to Sin City. And essentially that's what happened. And now going into this 21st tournament, we're pretty excited about, to see how it's evolved and grown over the years.
Yeah, that actually came up as well, how Founders Cup has grown not only in popularity, but back when it was first getting started, the revenue that Founders Cup brought in for WACA as a whole, how has that contribution changed to WACA's overall health from the very beginning to where it's at now, where teams are flying in and staying for 5, 6, 7 days?
Well, let's be honest. You know, Founders Cup in its initial setup, in its initial structure, did not contribute to the health of the company financially. I think there are still some players, including your viewers, that remember a time when Founders Cup was free for teams to participate in. It was a time where all teams waited for invites, and then at midnight you had to go online and accept your invite. Back when the website would crash a dozen times, it was horrible. I mean, but then, yeah, it was free. And it was something that the company felt that, hey, it's a fun way to bring people together, right? It was very organic in that sense and very player-driven, community-driven. So, but as the event grew, it became something that couldn't be free anymore because, well, everybody wanted the production level to step up for everything from like better equipment to better refs to, you know, in any venue, once you get a certain number of people attending, now there's all sorts of new costs and permits and insurance. And so it's, even though the event has grown over the years, it was quite a hurdle for the company to offer it as a free incentive for the players for a long time. And then I believe it was in right around, I think maybe the second year in Vegas was when we had to rip off the Band-Aid and figure out how to monetize the event to, at a minimum, pay for the expenses of the event, pay for all of our golf carts. You know, it's not, as people who have run any type of tournament or league know, it's not cheap, it's not easy, and then finding good people to help you work isn't easy too. So you need to pay them. Everything can't be volunteer based, and so you know, so yeah, the company from a revenue standpoint, at least Founders Cup and Walkapalooza now makes sense. right? It's something that over the last several years is sustainable to the point where we can actually deliver a really awesome event, a whole complete experience, right? You know, Founders Cup used to be just Saturday, just a single day tournament with maybe an after party. And now being part of this whole Walkapalooza thing, it's almost a whole week. We have players arriving as early as Tuesday and staying as late as Tuesday. And there's a party every night, a party every day, all sorts of shenanigans. And so, yeah, it's turned into quite the spectacle.
Very cool. It definitely has. Also, interested to know your personal future expectations for Founders Cup, where you've seen it go. Is it going to branch off from Walkapalooza as the social events become different from a competitive tournament? Is there anything that you can speak to as far as future expectations?
Well, I can't predict the future, obviously, but I can certainly tell you that Founders Cup is always going to be the bread and butter, the heart of Walkapalooza, right? It's the World Cup of kickball in terms of the eyes of the company. It's the flagship product, and even as Walkapalooza continues to grow with all these other kickball divisions and other sports and more parties and things like that. The company, the foundation, the core of the company doesn't want to lose sight of how this all started. And of course, Founders Cup for us is the pinnacle. It's the mountaintop of kickball. And so while we want to provide more offerings so that more and more people can get involved in Walkapalooza and feel part of the community, we certainly want to make sure people still know that, hey, the World Cup of kickball is here. This is the big event. Waka certainly doesn't want to do anything to take away from that. We want to enhance it more, and whether that's by getting more participants playing or more people watching the game and just being a part of the community.
Great. That leads me to another community question.
Yeah.
There was talk about that Waka has two very different crowds when it comes to Walkapalooza. There's this social scene casual players, and then there's these competitive players, most of whom maybe started out as those social scene players. And Founders Cup kind of provides this space that works for all types, but local leagues might not have, you know, the time and the space to be able to do that. Do you have some successful methods that you've seen do that helps maintain both groups simultaneously the way that Founders Cup has?
Well, it's challenging. I mean, one, let me first address the demographic. You know, for the longest time, the company thought there was just one type of person, the person that comes out to play kickball, right? And Founders Cup is a perfect example of the understanding of the kickball demographic. You know, for the longest time, we just pigeonholed everybody into one group, right? And there was only Founders Cup. So whether you wanted to wear tutus and get drunk the entire time, or whether you wanted to win the national championship, the only thing you could sign up for was Founders Cup. And then in 2012, you know, we started realizing, okay, there's a pretty big divide here. And it doesn't make sense for a team like OSC to play a drunken team that's just running around with inflatables the entire time, right? So, well, I'm sure the OSC guys appreciated the blowout win, and the other team didn't care. It just didn't make sense to pair them up together, right? And so we came up with the fun games, which catered to a different crowd. But then over the course of several more years, we also noticed there was a merging other group. And it's that middle group, which is the Kickball Open, right? And it's that middle group is really, I think, the core component of the longevity of this community and the ability to grow the game. I think something that all social sports, whether it's Waka, 365, or any of the other companies that deal with social sport players, is really understanding the evolution of the social sport athlete, right? You have your tier one player, as you mentioned. This is the people that all join the first time, right? When you hear about kickball and you're joining co-ed sport, you are not thinking about, I'm joining this to bunt most of the time, to play hard, to maybe kick twice in a game if I'm lucky. You know, that's not your mindset. That's not how you're sold on joining kickball. So tier one players come in, have fun, goof off. And the longer you play, you start getting better, right? You start getting more competitive, and you get to this tier two player, which is what we all were, say, circa 2010 through 2012, right? And then after that, the game really evolved. Once Founders Cup brought a bunch of people together and more competitive teams from all over the country started seeing how each other played. And then 365 started evolving with all their regional tournaments. Competitive players started playing more, and the game started evolving. The kickball athlete got better. The game got more strategic. And so now you have this tier 3 player, which is like the ultra elite player. Not only are they athletes, but they are experienced players in the game of kickball. You could bring a bunch of soccer athletes, track athletes into the game of kickball right now. They would get smoked by any veteran team. There's just so much strategy to the game now that the jump from 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 is so big that you have this middle one, in which that's why we introduced the Kickball Open 2 years ago, and we've seen so much growth in that. And so I think part of the success of Wacapalooza with Founders Cup, Kickball Open, and fun games, we want to do our best to try to mirror that in leagues. And before, leagues were fairly easy, right? Everybody kind of joined at the same time. You built your core base, and they all kind of grew up in the kickball community together, right? They all kind of joined around the same time. They all got better together at the same time, right? So if you think about it, the best way to compare it to would be like high school, right? You have your frosh soft athletes, and you play together, and then you graduate to your JV teams and then your varsity teams. But that's a process, right? And so that's why coaches rarely scrimmage varsity players against frosh soft players. It doesn't make sense. You don't give the young people enough time to grow, learn the game, and build their own team camaraderie to be able to make it all the way to varsity. And when you don't do that, that's where teams quit and that's where teams leave. And the hard part that we're struggling with, I think everybody's struggling with, is leagues that aren't big enough, that don't have as diverse of a community. That's a struggle, right? You have this one team that just beats up on everybody in the league. And so one of our goals with regionals, when we finally introduced regionals, was to give an outlet for these competitive players to play in order to qualify for Founders Cup, so they didn't have to put their all-star team in that league and beat the hell everybody up. And so we've seen it work in a number of markets where some of our senior teams, our most veteran teams, they don't put super teams in their league anymore, and they actually, in their local league, they split up into 3 or 4 teams, which brings a little bit more competitive balance. And then they wait for the regionals then to put their all-star team together, type of thing. And we're further trying to help that. Like this year, I don't know if you've noticed, but the guidelines, we've expanded the number of free agents you can have if you're bringing in a league team, because what we're trying to encourage you to do is be more inclusive with your league, as well as don't use your league to build this all-star team that destroys the community. And, that's our core product, right? The league-based community, to build this social sports environment that everybody can have a good time in.
That was a great answer. And you said the term super team and all-star team a couple times, and there were a lot of questions that surrounded this idea of forming super teams. But I'll start off with a question that came from a veteran player and winner. And he talked about this evolution from Founders Cup being an invitational tournament where these local teams qualified and represented their home division on this biggest stage. And now it's become maybe more than before an open event, with many teams being built just for the sole purpose of Founders Cup. They maybe play together once to qualify, and then the second time only to actually compete in Founders Cup. And people are interested in your views on this, if that's something that you're hoping does happen in Founders Cup, if you're aware of it and are thinking that it's not something to be concerned about, or if that's something where rules might start to break up these super teams or these one-time tournament regional teams.
No, it's a really good point. I think it's a point that a lot of players in the Founders Cup community have debated. Certainly, I've seen the discussions within the 365 forums about, how do we manage, if you will, this sort of evolution. And the reason we have this problem now is because we have a large group of players that have been playing for a long time, and their core team from the past is starting to break apart. And it's breaking apart because people are getting older, for one. So they're not, you're on the wrong side of 40, it makes it kind of hard to be as competitive as you were in your 30s or late 20s. People are getting married, settling down, moving, finally growing up, for lack of better words. And so, the problem's twofold, right? At least in Club Waka and even in all of kickball, it doesn't matter what company, I think people consider this still kind of a tight family unit. And the people that you play and you travel with, you compete with, it means a lot to you. And so when that dynamic has to break up, it sucks. Because at least for Club Waka, we view this as a social community first. And so when we feel that you should have a sense of freedom to play with the people that you care about, people that are your friends, the people that you've grown up playing with, that you've traveled with, and things like that. And that makes it hard when you get to a certain age demographic where that community starts to become fragmented. And so, but like I said, a lot of the rules we've put in place to manage that situation is to make sure that, one, whatever we do for tournaments doesn't hurt leagues, right? That's first and foremost, right? So it was important to give teams an opportunity to form super teams and regional tournaments, so they didn't do it in their local league if they still wanted to play in Founders Cup. Secondly, we started having tons of players that would play for a local league for like 5 years. They would sit with the same team for 5 years, and then they have to move, right? And so it didn't make sense if they couldn't play in the local league. How would they be able to play with their team in Founders Cup? And maybe Founders Cup in Vegas was one of the few opportunities they would get to see all their friends again and be with the people they love and care about, and be with the people they played kickball with. So we're sensitive to that. And I just think the other issue is when you become stranded, when your team no longer participates because half your rosters decided to retire. Where are you left to go? So some of them, we ask ourselves, does it make sense for them to go back to their local league and try to play with, a bunch of new players that they never played with, that are maybe 10 years younger than them? Or should they join up with a team that they're friends with after traveling and playing in tournaments for years? And so, we're certainly aware of the method that 365 has employed to do this. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. But what I think is important is that Club Waka shouldn't do the same exact thing as 365. I think the fact that we have it done differently leaves it broad enough so that players that still want to play kickball can find a way to do it. Right? If you're looking for the kind of the more tight structure that 365 has employed to try to create a competitive balance at the top, I think it's great. For Waka, though, we think that some of those, we're not under the same, what's the best way to describe it? We're not stuck under the same conditions. And I don't mean by stuck as in negatively, but our main goal is growth. And we feel that growth, by just having controlled varsity teams and they have to go down and pluck frost soft players out, fragments the natural growth of how team sports work, right? If the high school varsity team goes down to the frost soft team and takes all the best players to go play with them, right, and plugs all these people, now you have these fragmented frost soft teams that don't evolve and grow together, right? Like how all of our teams started back in the day. So we feel that creating an environment where teams create that community, that camaraderie, and start together and kind of grow together is a much better environment. So that's why we have these contained environments in the tournament with the three different tiers: the Founders Cup, Kickball Open, and Fun Games. And I think if we can do that with leagues and maintain that community balance, we're going to see that kind of growth. And so what's going to happen then is you're going to have your peaks and valleys, right? You're going to have the time where Founders Cup is going to be really big because you have this huge bevy of competitive teams. And then as teams start to age out and stuff, you're going to see a dip. But as you see the dip at the very top, the bottom starts to grow. Tier 1 and Tier 2, they start getting confidence. Kickball Open this year is going to be our biggest year yet for the Kickball Open. It's ridiculous. And I know at some point these teams are going to get ultra competitive and want to take the next step up, especially when the Golden State Warriors, if you will, of kickball have kind of aged out or retired. So it's, comes full circle, and the company's been around 20 years to kind of see this evolution. And we've seen it in various leagues, happen in the life cycle of leagues where, a bunch of people join in at the same time and they kind of as they dominate and become the core group of the league, it's hard for the young people or the new people to really establish themselves. But as they age out, the new people have a voice and they become the dominant group.
Yeah, really well.
Way too long. I just
no.
A lot in my head about that.
I think you might have answered more than one question in there, so you did great. That was well said. And I know you mentioned Kickball 365, the circuit, a couple of times. I had a lot of questions come in about if there's any vested interest in Kickball 365, either as a business venture for Waka or something that you use to build your models against to follow it, or completely opposite to do something different based on viewing it as doing it well or not doing it well.
Sure. I think there's this, I think there's this player-based notion that Waka and 365, you know, kind of compete against each other. But the ultimate truth is that we're both trying to grow the game of kickball, right? And certainly their focus on the level of play is a little bit different than ours. But at the end of the day, it's in the best interest of not only both companies, but the game, the sport itself, for us to grow together, to support each other, and to wish to do everything possible to help each other achieve success, right? Players come in and out of both the play in both products. And that should be the case, because, you know, it provides a different product, a different way of the game. And we're already a small community as it is. And so we need to not find ways to bring each other down, but to raise each other up, to support and help both companies grow. So in terms of the interest, I can certainly say that we are certainly interested that 365 continues to be successful, continues to grow, and continues to be a great advocate for the sport and the game.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so I know that before we got on this, you made a very specific request to me, and that was to not have to participate in a Marry, Fuck, Kill game.
I don't get why it's so popular with you guys. I don't know. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's like its own beast now.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm thrilled not to be the one that has to answer along with everyone else, but I think you'll like your choices here. So just as a quick explanation of the game, you can only marry one, fuck one, and kill one. And I think that the people are really looking for answers here. So take a deep breath. It won't be that bad. I'm going to share some pictures with you so that you can have a visual to go with what I'm saying. So your first choice right here is the 2015 Founders Cup champion team, Sofa King Good.
Wow, memories.
Choice number 2, your 2016 champions with a die-hard play at the very end are the Meatballs. And last but certainly not least, the critically acclaimed 7-0 hashtag team, last year 2017 champs, Relax and Take the D. So you have to marry one, fuck one, and kill one. And you're up.
Man. Is there a particular order I need to go?
No. Whatever you fancy.
All right. Well, let's go with marriage first. This team just, it's like fighting. If I'm not married, so I can't speak from experience, but from what I hear how everybody else deals with their marriage life and the frustrations and joys and struggles and headaches, I would certainly say I would marry Sofa King. They're in my backyard. I hear from them all the time. And I love them to death, but they also fill my inbox all the time with all sorts of requests, questions. You know, it's funny when I go and ref local league playoffs, you know, Max and Tyler and all of them are there, and they know I know my stuff, but they have no problem just testing me all the time. You know, hey, did you see that play? Did you see his foot go off the bag there? Did you see? Keep an eye on the. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I love them to death, but yeah, I mean, I'd have to marry them. It's just meant to be. Um, fuck. Wow. Well, you know the when it comes to thinking about the team that you would fuck, it's just that like one golden time where you can never repeat that moment again, and it's just a perfect storm of circumstances. And speaking of storm, you know, Meatballs, when they won a few years back, they almost didn't even make it to the tournament. They had that hurricane they were dealing with. Then they get into the elimination rounds of Founders Cup, and I think 2 or 3 of the games went to extra innings. I mean, so many times they should have been eliminated, right? And of course, the way they win is this wild throw that essentially isn't on target, but it is on target. It's that $10,000 throw that just ends up winning them the game. So, I mean, fuck me, man. That's just you can't ask for that. You can't expect that to happen again. So it's just that one glorious moment with that one celebrity that you're allowed to. So yeah, I'd totally hook up with Meatballs from 2016. Of course, that then leaves me to my most favorite team last year that I'm sure they wanted to kill me for a while, because after the Texas regional, they were insisting they should have had a top 4 ranking. And I ranked them all the way down to like 7th or 8th. And I convinced the committee, yeah, they're not that great. They're not that great. And then I was dealing with, you know, there are certain individuals or players that have been a challenge, that have made this job difficult. And I think, you know, praying and hoping that it would all work out okay. But, you know, there's certainly times I just wanted to kill them. But I'm happy that they won. I'm happy they had a good run, and I hope to see them back again.
Those are some great answers, Sab. Very well done.
You're not kidding. That's tough. I don't know how people do this.
Yeah, believe me, I don't either. Well, I'm going to give you some easy questions.
Oh, finally.
I think are easy now. Some rules questions came up, or issues about Founders Cup.
Yeah.
There's curiosity around if Founders Cup will move to 6 innings versus 5 innings.
Well, we're slowly considering some changes. And so like we did for all the regionals this year, starting the semifinal round, it'll be 6 innings. So the semis and the championship will be 6 innings. Part of the reason is, for the longest time, when the tournament was just one product, one grouping of all 3 demographics, a lot of players didn't want to play 6 innings. And it didn't make sense to play 6 innings when you were having all these blowouts, right? The other aspect of it is we don't want to keep players out of the field all day. A lot of people go to Founders Cup to play in Founders Cup, but they also want to be able to do all the other stuff too, right? So it's about finding a balance. And I think this year we had success with the regionals in adding that 6th inning. And so we're doing it for Founders Cup this year as well, especially when it gets down to those critical games. And we want to make sure people get their teams back to the top of the order and give people a chance to really leave it all out in the field. We've been fortunate. Last year was, I think, the first year in a long time where we never had a single game go into extra innings in the playoffs. So we'll see this year. I know players don't want to stay out there forever, and it's expensive for us to stay out there forever, because we go a minute past the hour, all of our buses charge us again. All the staff that's out there has to get paid. It's just, it's a lot of stuff. So, but certainly this year we are doing it for the Final Four and the championships, and we will definitely consider moving forward based on the response this year.
Cool. And then there's questions around the ball changing. Will the size of the ball or the makeup of the ball change in the future of Founders Cup?
I can tell you right now that I am not aware of any plans to change the ball. The ball has been the ball for a long time. We have a pretty big contract with our manufacturer, Mercasa, and it serves us well for all the leagues across the country. I mean, I have my own personal opinions about the ball. I know a lot of players do. But at the present time, no, the ball's not going to change.
Okay. Cut and dry. I like it. I know earlier you talked a little bit about balancing league play with teams who win their league being able to add up to 7 free agents, and limiting the free agents for these regional winners. And there was a question around if you plan or expect to wait a year to see the full effect of this free agent 7 players in league play, or if that's something that's going to go ahead and be carried out indefinitely.
Well, I wouldn't say anything is indefinite. Our job is to make changes based on the feedback of the players that we get, and as well as the staff that run leagues and the players within leagues. And so we stood behind the regionals because, one, it was what the players wanted. We saw a lot of teams that used to form super teams in leagues stop, which was great. And we've seen the regionals grow. I mean, year to date, we are at 26% growth on our regional tournaments over the previous year. And going into this year, you know, Wakapalooza is outpacing our numbers, registration numbers from last year. Mm-hmm. So all the changes that we would consider are just essentially based on what does the data tell us, right? What do the players tell us? What does the data on the field tell us? Our understanding right now is some of these changes that we've implemented are to help, right? Mm-hmm. To help provide a little bit more competitive balance, to make league teams not feel like they're going to walk in and get crushed by all these super regional teams, right? Offer a little bit of balance, but also encourage more. Now that we've asked all these league super teams to split off within their league, I don't want them to be like, well, if we do that, I can't bring my league team for Founders Cup, right? Because, you know, we did you guys a favor by trying to create competitive balance in the league and split on 4 different teams. But then now we're getting punished because we couldn't go to the regional. So we don't want to do that. And that's the primary reason we wanted to expand the free agency for the local leagues, because we want to make sure that the local leagues don't cannibalize all of the talent into one team. Right. So they can still come together as a group of friends to go play. And the truth behind that is we didn't have to do that in the past because we used to have leagues that would put in 3 or 4 teams. Right. And now it's consolidated because obviously that tier 3 player is a smaller demographic now than it was before.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more rules question. What about T-shirts? The players are interested in knowing if they'll be forced to wear these beautiful kickball T-shirts, or if there will be wiggle room to wear for another tournament.
I know my bosses will be watching this video at some point. So, Macy, why don't you let them know how many people or how strong the demand for this is?
I can only speak for my own team. I know that demand is very strong, but it did also come in from other players simply asking if that would be still forced upon Founders Cup.
I can tell you that it's being discussed. It's being considered and discussed. And I can understand the hesitation because I think there's a certain aesthetic value to seeing everybody wear the same type of uniform. And just the design changes are subtle, right? You know, it's just a different color. Maybe some team throws their logo on there. So I can certainly appreciate the aesthetic value of that. But I also understand that the value the players have in building team pride. And we've already allowed it for the fun games teams, right? The sillier teams that want to, you know, really promote their quote unquote franchise, right? They're proud of it. They're proud of their team, their community, their friends, and they want to show it off and show off their creativity. And so we understand that Founders Cup players have that same desire. And so it is certainly being considered. And I would hope that we'll have an answer or resolution to the issue soon so that teams can plan accordingly.
Cool. I like it. Okay, I'm going to jump into some questions that have to do with a little bit more of the personalities that exist in the Founders Cup player side. And first and foremost, there were some personal questions about participating in Founders Cup. But in general, people who have been banned or suspended in a local league are interested to know if that carries over to Founders Cup and if rules change, or if there's an opportunity for those who had trouble in their local league, if when it comes to Founders Cup, things are different.
Right. Well, I can tell you that we don't have specific disciplinary policies described in our rule set. And that's mainly because we want to look at each situation on a case-by-case basis. We want to understand why things happen. And we always also want to see if there's a road for reconciliation. And we would hope that, I mean, the key is for the player to build trust with the company, or at least the people involved in making that decisions, to understand the scenario and understand the judgments that we make. So it's, you know, it's why the selection committee meets to kind of think about all sorts of things from, you know, can this player qualify as a special exemption to be a free agent, things like that. Certainly, we want to maintain an environment where players feel safe, don't feel threatened. And so, yeah, we'll have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. I understand it's a passionate game, and, you know, people sometimes let their emotions get the best of them. But I also don't believe that, you know, any mistakes people make should define them for the rest of their entire time. And if you don't give people an opportunity to reconcile some of the past mistakes, then we're not doing anything to help anybody become better. So that's my personal belief on that. I know that many in the company share that same opinion. I mean, we are a community, we're a family, and you know, only under the most extreme circumstances would you have to turn your back away from someone.
Okay. So speaking of that, in those not as extreme circumstances, who are some of the most difficult teams, players, and captains that you have had to deal with or deal with currently?
Well, wow, you're making me call out people. And this time I don't have the luxury of a list that you've pre-provided with, like, the MFK.
No, there's not only.
But, well, certainly just about every team in Founders Cup. I think at this point, everyone wants to have a voice, right? Everyone wants to be heard, and everybody has issues, whether regarding their roster or their format, things like that. Certainly, I hear more from the players I see most often. So, essentially, west of Texas, I hear a lot from those teams. I know Brent, my counterpart on the east side, he hears a lot from everybody out there. There's not a team that, I mean, to be frank, there's not a team that I hate or dislike. I mean, I understand everybody's motivations. And we certainly want to find a way to find common ground and understanding. I think the key thing is, I think the key things in building success in this type of tournament and player, producer, and customer relationship is transparency and trust. And so I try to be as open and honest with everybody as I can when we talk about issues and their concerns. And I do my best to empathize with them, but I also do my best to try to have them understand where I'm coming from, or where the company's coming from, or where the community is coming from. Mm-hmm. Right. And so there are colorful characters. It's the same colorful characters that are also the loudest in the various community forums online. And, you know, I think it adds to the popcorn value, if you will. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, everybody's a part of this community, and it's made up of all sorts of different characters, and we have to learn to how to balance that and accept each other for various differences. And when there are conflicts, you just work on finding a resolution, and that starts by just talking to them. Mm-hmm. Sorry, it's a kind of a generic, very political answer, but
very diplomatic.
I mean, there's not a single person I can really call out and say something about them that I wouldn't say about somebody else. I mean,
yeah, no, I like it. Good answer. What about when it comes down to the relationship between refs and players? We had some questions that have to do with concern on the player side of refs who know other players and exercising favoritism, as well as concerns from the refs that want to know what WACA does for Founders Cup in order to protect those refs from being berated and feeling as though they don't have a choice by certain players. What's kind of the baseline for protecting both parties?
So, yeah, I mean, this is always a very difficult situation. And to give it some perspective, let me first explain. I always try to understand a situation from the player perspective, you know, especially captains and players. They have a right to get upset about calls. I mean, they're playing in a competitive game. It's a tournament, and there's a prize involved, and so they want it done right. But at the same time, you can get angry and upset, but there's a way you conduct your behavior with that. And there's a line you don't cross. And that line that you don't cross is one where my referee feels threatened, right? Or feels uncomfortable doing their job. And of course, we try to find refs that are knowledgeable about the game, have experience, and have somewhat of a thick skin. They have a high tolerance level to deal with the passion and enthusiasm of the competitive player. So we certainly want that. But all the refs that come know that I have their back as long on any judgment calls. Calls with regarding to rules, infractions, things like that, they need to know the rules. So if they're wrong, I'll correct them and I'll let the teams know. But things like judgment call, bang, bang plays, or their opinions of what they saw, didn't see, I'll always have their back. And yet the customer also knows, and I say this at every captain's meeting for Founders Cup, is that if you have an issue with a referee, don't put yourself in a situation where you can get kicked out of the game. Come find me, come find Brent, come find Colin. There's a lot of staff available where you can get your concern addressed, and then we can kind of come on in and mitigate the situation. And I can understand how it's difficult, because it's not like other sports where most of the referees are these guys that have retired from the game 15 years ago and don't have a personal relationship with the player on the field. A lot of these refs have personal relationships, and it's the philosophy behind WACA as well. We're all friends here, right? We have volunteer refs in leagues, and if you're being judged by your own peers, you're not going to yell at your friend as you would some guy that we just paid that you don't know. Well, unfortunately, the truth is, it doesn't matter if he's your friend. In fact, if he's your friend, you expect him to make the call in your favor, right? So it's we can certainly understand and appreciate that difficulty. I think, we've been fortunate in Founders Cup not to really have big ref controversies over, at least since I've been involved. Yeah, sure, there's been some missed calls and things, and we've had to make some changes, but I don't think we've ever had a situation at Founders where it really swung a game in elimination rounds that was extremely critical. And I think part of that is when you come to Founders Cup, there's a strong support team there. And if you don't like your referee for whatever reason, come talk to me, there's people you can come talk to, and we can figure out why it is. Right. And sometimes it's just a personality thing. And sometimes just, well, you know what? He gave us a bad call earlier in, pool play. We don't like him. Can we get a different ref? So we try to get the captains beforehand. Hey, once you get to elimination round, are you okay with the 3 refs here? Now, what's helped over the years is players start to recognize referees, right, and build a relationship and a certain level of trust, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I know he's a good ref. I'll give him the benefit. Yeah, I disagree with his call, but it takes time to build that. I remember when I first started reffing, I got yelled at all the time. But over the years, as I became a better ref and I got better at the rules and I learned how to better manage my own emotions, I think my relationship with the players on the field has gotten better. And I try to be preemptive about really communicating really well and explaining reasonings behind calls. But, it's tough. When you have captains will just be difficult for you for the sake of being difficult. And they'll do it because they're defending their teammate, and it sucks because even when they know they didn't see what happened, they'll still come at you and yell at you that that's the most obvious thing they ever saw, right? And so that's, and that's kind of difficult. But you as a referee need to kind of understand it and figure it out. And certainly if, I think we both know what we were talking about here in terms of a specific scenario. There's a way to complain, and then there's a way to not complain, right? And so it's when you get personal and you start swearing, cussing out a ref, spitting at a ref, things like that. Obviously, that's way too far. And there's absolutely zero tolerance for anything like that. So, but I think we found a good balance, and we have a good management team there to support the refs to make sure that those lines, if they get crossed, are handled appropriately.
Great. I love it. What about those that aren't necessarily at Founders Cup for Founders Cup? How do you work on making kickball an exciting sport to watch? How do you see plans of getting it featured on, channels like ESPN? Like, how does that work as far as the visibility for both those that are in Vegas and, maybe those who would watch at home? How do you make it that interesting?
Well, this has been an issue that we've debated around for a while, and I have my personal, I'll tell you my personal opinions about this first, because I think it's not something I think either 365 or Club WACA really share. But I know a lot of players are like, hey, why is ESPN featuring cornhole and spike ball and ultimate frisbee and all these other sports, and kickball is getting no love, right? And I think when you go online and look at viewership of games that are recorded, I think that kind of explains it. You know, a lot of people don't like watching competitive kickball, right? And I think the reason why is because it goes against the expectation that they have. The customer expectation when they think of kickball, especially competitive kickball, falls in line with what they think the evolution of baseball and softball is. And so when you see competitive kickball and you see that it's just bunting a majority of the time, it actually goes against the viewership of the standard customer, right? We expect power, we expect speed. We're not expecting this ball to go 5 feet down the line and the same thing happen over and over again. So I think that ultimately is going to hurt the growth of the game if they want it to expand into mainstream consciousness. I think kickball, the game as it is perfect for the casual person to come and play and goof off and build a social community around. But to become a sport that grows internationally, that is adopted at the college intramural levels, that hopefully one day gets more competitive games all across, it needs to do what dodgeball did. And dodgeball, for the longest time, I don't know how familiar you are, but dodgeball used to play with that old school playground rubber ball, right? It's an 8.5 ball. And what the problem with that ball was it eliminated the speed and power of the game for so many people. So what the dodgeball community has done is they've changed the ball. And so in so many different facets of the dodgeball community, they play with a smaller ball, a different type of ball that adds a lot more athleticism to the game. And I think, in my personal opinion here, this is not something the company shares, I think if we want to see kickball have that same type of growth where the game is adopted all over the world, it needs to change the ball. I mean, to me, there's no reason why we need to play with the orange ball or the current red ball for competitive play. Why does it have to be a 10-inch ball? I think for the game to become more popular at a competitive level, it needs to shrink down to the size of a size 5 soccer ball where you can launch the ball. So basically the ball would have the same density and weight of a size 5 soccer ball, but would have the external surface of that playground rubber so that it's easy to grip. So but once you have that, now you have a game that's incentivized for players that kick, line drive, try to kick home runs. You expand the field out, right? And the ball is smaller, so more people can throw it, can grip it with one hand, throw it all over, and throw it further and harder. And it would create essentially baseball on the field. I mean, you have an incentive to launch that ball. Pitchers can throw wild pitches. You know, they can put more speed behind the ball. If anything, we can extend the bases out to baseball size, 90 feet, have a bunt line so that players aren't bunting. And then with 9 players on the field and a ball like a soccer ball, you expand the game so much. I mean, imagine if you played competitive kickball with a soccer ball. That'd be ridiculous, right? There's going to be so many holes in the field, and the game would look like something I think the American public would be like when they tune in and say, yeah, this is what I would imagine would be at a much more extreme level, much more action plays, diving catches, people kicking line drives over the field. You know, hot third base and shortstop would really be hot corner. Because right now in real kickball, whether it's circuit or Founders Cup, third base is running in to pick up a bunt. They're not afraid of a line drive, right? So I think that's the key thing that needs to change for the game to be more widely adopted all around, because there's so much. The bunting aspect, while essential and important to this game, turns off a lot of people from a viewership standpoint, and even other athletes that come in and look at it. And that's unfortunate, because kickball, unlike dodgeball, actually has a bigger pool of players to pull from. You have both the baseball community and the soccer community. Soccer, when I bring soccer players over to kickball and they see this bunting business, they're like, what? Right? But imagine if the ball was similar size to the soccer ball and you could kick it as far as one. Now they're interested. Now it's like foot golf has only emerged, in the last 7-8 years, and already it's a much bigger sport than kickball because it's just easily more adoptable. It caters to the power of a soccer ball traveling. And, you know, there's a lot of truth to when they say people dig the long ball. Yeah, they dig the long ball, the fastball, the power ball. American baseball, we love home runs. We don't like playing the small ball game. So I think, you know, if any company out there really wants to try to push it to the extreme to see this game change the ball, make it so that there's no reason that anybody wants to bunt. Rather than a rule, make it like, no, we've got an incentive to drive the ball, kick the ball. We want to play for power.
I like it. Power. Yeah. No small ball. Okay, speaking of, I just have 2 more quick questions for you, Sa.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about dodgeball. I had a question about the percentage that kickball makes up of Club Waka versus its other social sports, such as dodgeball, kind of where it stands in there.
Okay. I can't give you exacts, but I mean, it's been changing over the years as we introduce new sports. But as you know, this used to be 100% kickball company, and it's down now to about 70%, and with all these other sports growing. So we're excited about it because sometimes kickball just isn't someone's jam. And the most important thing is we want people to come in and be part of this social sports community, to make friends, memories, and have a good time. So we're always going to be a kickball company because that's the primary product and that's the game we all love. But I would say that number is probably going to hover anywhere between 60 and 70 over the next few years. I don't think it'll ever dip below 50 just because, I mean, kickball leagues are fun. Even if you just like the game, when you join a kickball league, it's just a completely different monster. And the funny part is I've seen a lot of veteran players who left playing league kickball for a while because they all they want to do was just play tournaments and be ultra competitive. And now they're slowly coming back.
Yeah.
They're pulling kind of a Benjamin Button, coming back to the leagues and being like, oh, I want to play with that young free agent team and goof off with them. And, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Welcome back. We miss you.
It's like the fashion trends. They just go out of style and come right back.
Right. So, Club Waka wants to continue to be as big of an open community as we can. And I think, we need that. I mean, we're living in such a cynical world right now. And I think we need more and more people to get off social media and come out and play and meet people in person so that you can have some context to the conversations that you're having.
I like it. Well, this is it, Sa. Last final question. Any surprises or new things for players and participants to expect at Founders Cup on October 6th this year?
Yes. Everybody bring a bathing suit or swim trunks out to the field when you're at Founders Cup on Saturday, October 6th.
All right.
Just have it handy. You're going to want to put it on at some point. It's not, you won't be forced to. It'll be a total volunteer thing, but we're doing something tremendous and crazy at Wakapalooza on the fields this year. It'll probably get us banned from Vegas. But we're going to do it anyways. It's just a crazy idea. We're going to give it a shot. We'll probably have an announcement about it soon in the next, I don't know when we're going to announce it, but it's pretty much all set and done. And so, yes, bring a bathing suit, bring swim trunks. There will be good times to be had.
All right. Good times in a bathing suit. Sounds good.
Right.
Sa, you've been wonderful. You answered everything that we asked. I will make sure that players are able to see all of your responses. If you have anything else to say, now's the time for anyone to hear it. And then we'll get out of here.
Macy, I want to thank you for hosting this and thank the kickball community for their continued support. And certainly, the whole point of this conversation was to try to answer everybody's questions and give people an understanding of why we do what we do. I mean, the last thing I want to see is people just speculate online and then go on these ridiculous tangents and rants. First and foremost, get a question, don't hesitate to ask me. Ask me on Facebook, shoot an email, or find somebody that you feel comfortable asking in your Club Waka community. And number two, I think that the most important thing is we all want to see this game and this sport grow. And in order to do so, we need to be supportive of all efforts that are trying to grow the game, whether it's at the local league level, and even if you disagree with your local social sports provider and how they manage the game, you still got to support them and encourage players to come out and play, because nobody falls in love with competitive kickball from the start. And the easiest thing to detract players from even getting a chance to love the game is they're disliking the community behind it. And I think that's the most critical barrier to the growth of the game. So, you know, the thing that drew you in the beginning, the fact that you could meet people, make friends, and have fun. Yeah, you can still be competitive as hell, but let's make sure that let's not give people a reason to dislike you and dislike the game. So that's all I got to say about that. Thank you again, Macy.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be posted in public for anybody to see. And Sa, looking forward to Founders Cup this year. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye, everybody.